Finally, our last speaker is Zhebin Zuo. So has studied his bachelor's degree in Law and Business Administration in Renmin University Law School, and he's studying in Harvard Law School. His short paper is Amazon's Antitrust Paradox in Horizontal Shareholding. You have 7-8 minutes approximately.
Thank you.
You can start.
Thank you for the organizer for this amazing event. And after events we're going to have, so I'm going to be very short so we can enjoy our bike ride. I'm just graduated from Harvard, and I'm going to be a visiting scholar in the fall. This is a working paper, small one, basically targeting two papers. One from Lina Khan's Amazon's Antitrust Paradox. Another one is Aina Haug's Horizontal Shareholding. The later one is a theoretical framework. The first one is like a case study. I found inconsistency between them, and I tried to resolve them. So there are three parts of my presentation. The first part, I tried to raise the questions of the inconsistencies. The second part, I tried to explain them. The third part, I re-examined the solutions they provide. So let's start with the first part. So what is horizontal shareholding? Professor Elhaig basically in his two articles, 2015 and 16, explained what it means, and he combated a lot of critics of him. He's trying to find more empirical evidence. Basically, the thing is that we have a lot of institutional investors, such as BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, Fidelity, and they own a lot of companies' shares. For example, in the banking industry, JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Citigroup, they are all owned by these four main shareholders. Although they don't have a majority of shares, but they have some voting power in major decisions. So under this shareholder structure, Professor Elhaig mentioned mainly have two arguments. First, that this horizontal shareholding structure leads to anti-competitive results. So the first argument is about competitiveness. And the second argument is regarding inequality. So he compares the structure of shareholding with the history of American income inequality. These are his main two arguments. What I found in Amazon's case is that there could be inconsistency with these two arguments. Let's see the first one. So Amazon and eBay are also horizontally owned. They are horizontal by Vanguard and BlackRock. However, if we recall the first argument about anti-competitive conduct, Amazon and eBay doesn't seem to have any those conduct he raises. In the contrast, they adopt below market prices to compete, maybe for future dominance. And more extremely, Amazon is very aggressive in integrating across distinctive business lines. So the question is, in platform economy, like we're discussing the digital platforms, will the horizontal shareholding framework still apply? These are some business strategies Amazon's adopted. Basically, they have no incentive so far to stop their competition or prioritize any shareholders, like there's horizontal shareholders incentives in reducing competition. And for the second argument on inequality, so basically Elhaig is based on Piketty's theory in 2014 on science. He has a theory of that the increase return to capital and decrease return to labor will make the rich richer and the poor poorer. And that's how the capitalism works in 21st century. And Elhaig also mentioned that only certain markets benefit from these investments, so that they suppress the market output. This will decrease the economy-wide demand for labor and reduces wage and employment. So he tried to link the horizontal shareholding with the reason why America is experiencing larger and larger inequality since the 1980s. This is the graph, which is very evident that after the 80s, there's increased horizontal shareholding and the income inequality in the United States surged. There are a lot of criticism of his arguments, but here I only focus on Amazon's case study to see whether it can have any inequality impact. So Amazon's practice is actually exact opposite to the first argument, as we have just mentioned. But so maybe in this line of logic, it can reduce inequality. for example, let's see that if Amazon has no incentive to suppress the market output, it has a lot of good innovations, cross distinctive business lines, and very creative. So that, like in LPIC's perspective, it might be okay, but later we'll see. Even more, that when they penetrate the traditionally horizontal owned industries like the delivery and books, the publishing industries, maybe they can boost their competitiveness. So in this way, they also reduce inequality. So this could be the positive effect. However, but the implication is very unclear, because Amazon neither have increased growth in demand for labor, according if we want to use Piketty's theory. So the automation is actually reduce return to labor and also increase the return to capital, like in traditional industries. So it's really unclear how the positive and negative effects balance each other. So on the secular argument, I think the Amazon case is very unclear what the inequality implications are. So now when we find the inconsistencies, let's try to resolve them by explaining how it happened. So my argument has 3 points, but mainly they are based on data and political bottlenecks. So under the general framework of foreclosure and bottlenecks, I have 3 points. So first one is more evident. I don't want to discuss a lot. It's Bezos basically has more power in voting because he's the founder and CEO. Like most of the startup companies, and they start all the way have a lot of voting power. Despite of the horizontal shareholders, maybe they say, I don't want to compete with eBay, but the Bezos say, I want to, then they have no say. But the second point is that Bezos can actually persuade these horizontal shareholders with good reasons. And that's what I think the main reason. And third one is more presumptive. It's about global competition, which I'll touch upon briefly. So let's look at the second point. Foreclosure and bottleneck, I don't think I need to explain a lot. Basically, it's we have read about Tiro a lot. In his 2014 Nobel Prize lecture, he gave us a very clear explanation of how this integration, vertical integration, can happen with these bottleneck companies. So Amazon's, as Lina Khan has argued in her article, the two major business strategies I think can fit into this bottleneck and foreclosure framework. First is that they aggressively invest and they lose a lot of profits in the beginning. They don't make any money at first for a long time. But then it gradually recovered and then captured 46% of online shopping, the market share. And then the integration across the different lines of business, like in marketplace, in delivery, and in the cloud service, they are getting a dominance position. Okay. So the framework debate would be whether in the Chicago School framework, the Amazon's behaviors actually can constitute of anti-competitive conduct. But Lina Khan basically saying that we have to abandon this because the traditional structure and process framework is more suitable. So the data exploitation as bottleneck can explain this very well. In like a small case here is that Amazon Basics, they use the data they get, and then they quickly defeated the previous competitors by using these data. For example, on the women's clothing, that they have quickly expelled the others from their marketplace. So they both act as the marketplace, like this, the hosts, and they also sell the things. They use their data to gain their power on this marketplace. And a further one could be the power and politics as bottlenecks. So both Alpic and Khan has mentioned that the politics and market power are closely related, and antitrust has long been proved to guard politics away. However, just like the big banks, those are too big to fall, and the government always saves them. The Amazon, they have a lot of incentive to increasingly become larger and larger, so their horizontal shareholders will also support them, because in the end, if they fail, the government will support them as well. And another one we can see also from the recent elections from Cambridge Analytica and Facebook. So if Amazon also have this power of acquiring data from profiles from the readers, from different, all kinds of preferences they can analyze, they will also have a bottleneck position in the political arena. Not only Facebook, but from this point of view, their power and political bottleneck can be more underlying the bargaining power. So the third one is more presumptive. If we expand the relevant market to the global competition, we can see that maybe Alibaba from China is competing with Amazon in the global market. And so each horizontal shareholder from their own country will support their major players. So there could be an inverse effect of horizontal shareholding. If we have eBay and Amazon, we think Amazon can beat Alibaba in global market, then all the shareholders will invest in Amazon to make it the big player to win against Alibaba. And then the political one I can also expand. For example, the Amazon's expansion in China later failed, and now Alibaba in the US is not very well. Competition on 5G, also Huawei and ZTE are very under attack right now in the US. And also on data transfer, we can see that Europe and US, they have undergone the ECJ's struck down of the previous cross-border data transfer agreement, and the localization of data in China and GDPR is also very obvious. Okay, so the solution part we can be very easy. I will skip the main solution provided by Khan. I will just say the directions of enforcement if we take into account of the horizontal shareholding. So if we harness the positive externality of Amazon, that their vertical integration can break the traditional horizontal shareholding, it could both have the competitive effects and reduce inequality. However, we have to be aware of their potential negative externality of data and political bottlenecks. But the devil is in the details. So when we are trying to see whether we break them into, for example, common carrier or public utility, as suggested by Khan, we need to distinguish which markets are more suitable. For example, in the C2C market or in the cloud service market, it's very different. And we come to the conclusion. So it's basically still two arguments. One is that the Amazon's paradox doesn't fit into the horizontal shareholding. Actually, it challenges this and can bring positive effects if we harness it very well. However, we also need to be aware of the political and data bottleneck. And the second argument is on the inequality effects, that it's very unclear whether these new digital platforms will contribute to the inequality arguments, because now there's emerging literature saying that we can not only look at efficiency, but we also look at inequality in antitrust enforcement. So if we want to justify a framework shift, then we also need to see how horizontal shareholding and these digital platforms play out in inequality. And so that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zuo. We are out of time, so we are going to finish the session. Thank you for your participation. We have a